The visa backlog for German companies in the country is reportedly putting about 100,000 jobs on the line. The South African government says the backlog, which is worsened by the COVID-19 pandemic, slowed down the entry of skilled employees into the country. For more on this, I'm joined by Adrian Roos, who's a DA Shadow Minister. This is for matters relating to home affairs. Now, firstly, Adrian, can you provide an overview of of the implications of this particular visa backlog in the country, and really this significant challenges that it poses, especially for business?
Well, I think, we've got to start with the quarterly employment statistics that have been recently released, talking about us losing 8,000 jobs a month in South Africa. And I think if you look at one of the apex priorities of Home Affairs, it is to create jobs, in fact. And one of the main ways to do this is through visas, through attracting skilled foreign persons and investors to come into South Africa. And it's causing a substantial loss to our economy. I'll just give you two examples. The one is retirement visas. In a recent parliamentary question by my colleague Manny de Freitas, Home Affairs indicated that 499 retirement visa opportunities were lost. So what this means is these persons spend on average about 37,000 Rand a month, and they buy a house, they have their own medical aid, and they do not compete for jobs because they're retired. And so in that case, you're losing about 220 million Rand to the economy per month, excluding what they would spend on buying a house, etc. And then there's the issue of digital nomads, for example. Over 50 countries already have digital nomads. They spend between 55 and 90,000 Rand per month on local economies, and they essentially live as tourists. And if you look at what the expected share of these persons that we could get in South Africa, you're talking about monthly revenue of 5 to 8 billion Rand per month. And so there's a massive loss. So, if you look at tourism, it contributes 1 to every 12 jobs in this country. And so Home Affairs really needs to get a move on and sort out this visa issue once and for all.
Let's speak about solutions then. Are there any legislative or even policy changes that you believe should be considered to indeed address this issue here?
So I think, we've got to address the elephant in the room. And obviously you can talk about policy and that, but corruption has a massive role to play here. And, I've said it a number of times that the system in Home Affairs is not broken. It works for specific people that benefit from it. And I want to give you an example of, depending on who you ask, the minister or his officials, there are between 40 and 55,000 backlog in visas. But if you look at a report that was recently done, the Lubisi report into corruption at Home Affairs, and just in one or two categories of visas, they showed that 45,000 visas had been fraudulently issued. So if you do the maths on those two things, if those persons hadn't spent that time adjudicating those 45,000 fraudulent visas, we wouldn't have a 45,000 visa backlog. So that is the one key thing. There's obviously the elephant in the room that we're all aware of. And then there's things like very strange rejections of visa applications. So, for example, a spousal visa, which is rejected because a marriage certificate is not provided. And that's obviously crazy that you can accept an application without, for a spousal visa, without having a marriage certificate. So, what we're looking at is in some categories, persons are having to appeal twice or three times, either because Home Affairs has lost documents and mainly because their staff don't know their job. We look at cadre deployment, and in a recent parliamentary session, we said, what is going on, Minister? What are you going to do about it? And he said they'd hired 18 lawyers now to come and assist with visa adjudication because the persons that were there did not understand the law. They were unable to interpret the law. And so the question was, why were they hired in the first place, and why were they put in these important positions?
Now, as a possible solution, potential digitization of the visa approval process is an issue that's been mulled over. How can technology and these digital solutions be leveraged to indeed improve the efficiency as well as transparency of this visa application system?
Well, I think certainly, it helps if you have some capability to have your IT systems running. And Home Affairs, unfortunately, has a big problem in this regard. Even if you look at the e-visa system, it's constantly up and down. And this is true of IT systems across Home Affairs. This is what allows fraudulent activity to happen. The systems are antiquated inside Home Affairs and in the back end, and that is what allows fraudulent activity to take place. And bear in mind what I said before, that 45,000 fraudulent visas were adjudicated within, I think it was a 5-year period. And those could have been real visa applications, and then we wouldn't be talking about a backlog. And so I think certainly, fundamental governance inside the Department of Home Affairs and systems that are put in place to track and make it less easy to issue these fraudulent visa applications will go a long way to solving the problem. And then there are other issues such as, for example, the frivolous rejections of visas, which have gone up officially to 25 to 30% of visas are rejected, but anecdotally there's a lot more of that. And what that means is that then people have to pay another $1,500 odd rand to visa facilitation services to go and fix that. So, and also it means that you're adjudicating the same visa 2 or 3 times. So there are some very common sense things that can be done if you have the desire to fix it. Because if you fix the situation, then you have much less opportunity for fraud and corruption. And then you start to benefit the economy instead of benefiting the connected few.
Now, as the Shadow Minister for the DA, what role do you believe opposition parties can indeed play to also address the visa backlog and holding the government accountable for its impact on the economy?
Yes, as the Democratic Alliance, we assist members of the public on a regular basis that come to us, owners of businesses that are essentially unable to operate and that are forced with leaving the country. And so we do hold the Minister and the officials to account in Parliament on a regular basis. And really it comes down to the fact of you have a backlog and what solutions are being put in place to remedy that backlog. And we put in place a raft of proposals on what can be done on things like the renewal of tourist visas, on the issues I spoke about spousal visas, and other issues. And so there are some very concrete proposals and they're technical proposals, so I won't really go through them over here. But essentially we're going to keep on the pressure to look at not only the numbers, but what we're spotting now is an increase in rejections, and it almost seems like the rejections are there to say that you have processed an application where you haven't really processed it. You're just trying to reach a target. And so we're looking at it from a holistic point of view. How do we look at the corruption side with the Lubisi report? We've constantly been calling on the Minister to say that very senior officials that have been implicated in wrongdoing,
right,
they seem to be given a golden handshake and fired without any criminal prosecutions taking place. And so we're putting pressure on the Minister to say that you need to start taking criminal action against people that are acting as criminals inside your department. Otherwise, they will not take you seriously.
Now, we've heard the concerns raised, but as we wrap up, what impact do you think the visa backlog has, especially on South Africa's competitiveness in attracting foreign direct investment as well as skilled workers?
Well, I've given you some examples of the extreme amount of revenue that we're losing just on digital nomads and retirement visas. And to give you an example, retirement visa, Mexico, which is famous for America saying that people are fleeing Mexico to go to America. Mexico is the second most attractive retirement visa destination in the world that are very successful in attracting persons to retire there. And so I think we need to look at this low-hanging fruit. So, for example, retirement visas in these countries, they allow you to come in first and then adjudicate your retirement visa, whereas here they make you wait outside of the country for 12 months. And so we're putting pressure on the Department of Home Affairs to say, come on, let us be pragmatic. And one of your main roles is to create jobs. It's in their midterm strategic framework, and we're going to really be pushing for that. I think apart from the fact that you have corporates that are battling to get their workers in, critical skills that can help to grow businesses. And, if you look at it, was even a Reserve Bank Deputy Governor Naidu that said it's easier, making it easier for skilled immigrants to live and work in the country should be a no-brainer because it can create 4 unskilled jobs for every skilled migrant. And so it should be an urgent priority. I know that there was a report on some reviews of the visa regime that President Ramaphosa mentioned in his State of the Nation address, and they are all behind schedule in terms of being implemented, and we need to see urgency from our government. I mean, some of these common sense and very easy to implement changes that could result in massive job creation in this country.
The DA's Adrian Roos there commenting on those visa backlogs.